This episode of Broken Silicon is brought to you by FlexiSpot and their brand day sale. Follow the links and directions below to save money during their sale that lasts till May 27th. And remember that doing so also helps out the channel. And then also this episode is brought to you by cdkeyoffer.com. Go to cdkeyoffer.com to get your Windows keys for reasonable prices with offer code Broken Silicon that will save you 25%. Or use offer code DIESHRINK to save 3% off everything else on the website. And then it is also brought to you by Vite Ramen. Use offer code Broken Silicon to get 10% off your orders there. And we'll talk about these sponsors more later. But for now, let's just get on with the show. And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom, and today I am joined by my co-host,
Dan.
Oh, and Wendy, I can see barely.
Wendy is off screen now.
Try to make her go to the end of the bed.
We'll see. She's weird about this, but
I know. I want to see.
Come here. She does not feel like it anymore.
We tend to call her a long girl because if she's on one end of a bed and you call her over, I don't know, I guess she just seems to think if she moves her head an inch, that's enough. And she doesn't even get up. She's too lazy to get up. She'll just start stretching across the bed. I'm closer. This is good enough.
Yeah, she's probably, I don't know. Her torso is probably about, I don't know how long, maybe 3 feet long, and she somehow stretches herself out to be 5 feet long sometimes. Hence the moniker Long Girl. So Wendy was a long girling right there, and now she's back to being a ball. But
yeah, all Jessie's doing lately is trying to eat as many cicadas as she can.
Well, that's a equally worthy endeavor, I think. So
I say she's at unlimited shrimp night at Red Lobster all the time when I want to tell Emma when she's doing it. But yeah, I mean, you don't really have cicadas up in Minnesota, do you?
I think we're supposedly at the boundary of one of the broods, but I haven't seen any. Okay. I don't know if they emerge at different times based on where you are, like your latitude, or I would guess they do, but I don't know.
Well, they're definitely here in Nashville, let me tell you that much, where there is overlapping broods. And yeah, I guess I don't know if there's much else to say here at the opening. I mean, we're starting a bit later than usual because I was trying to finally clean up much of my office. And I'm realizing now that anyone watching this doesn't see a single difference in the hours of work I put in today, categorizing, organizing. I'd say I'm basically halfway done doing it. The level of calm I see is so much better than usual. And yet you guys, I don't know, see that I moved a couple graphics cards around, I guess.
Yeah, what you don't see in Tom's studio is the room in his house that he turned into a studio is the size of a pretty big bedroom, I would say. And to his left, or to the right, from your perspective, or from the viewer's perspective, there's a twin bed and a entire section of a desk. And then to the left, there's an entire room there, basically, that was just filled with crap.
Just piles of crap.
That every time I've been to your house, since you've moved there, it's been filled with stuff.
Well, and it's because the idea, hopefully I'll be able to realize it 1 year after I moved here, I'm starting to realize. But the idea is there's a kind of a side desk here. I have a new desk from FlexiSpot that I'm going to set up as well. But that there will be a side desk area and a testing area here, but maybe a secondary testing area there. And you could get to a point where some of those OBSBot AI cameras that can follow me around, we could do entirely different perspectives for how we portray and do some videos, right? Would be the idea if the other desks weren't covered in crap.
Yeah, and to do that though, the other disk not being covered in crap is pretty important, I think.
I think so, at least. But I guess I have no way to segue covered in crap to the next thing. So I'll just get right into it with story number one. Nvidia poised to launch RTX 5080 early for China. As said in a recent video out of this channel, the RTX 5090 was planned to launch first, possibly even at the end of Q3 of this year at one point. And this entire time, the 5080 has actually been much more of a murky product since AIBs, at least as of, I think it was like a week or so ago, have basically no information on this thing at all. And so we're in no way ready to launch cards anytime soon. But from what I've been told recently, a decision was made this month whereby Nvidia decided that they need to launch the 5080 as soon as possible and that it should be first. But that might still be in Q4 since it really isn't ready right now. So in many ways, you might actually argue that the news that is coming out right now about the 5080 launching first is really more so news of the 5090 being delayed than all that much really changing with the 5080's release cadence. I'm told that it might actually have decent volume in Q4 though, and that's because they do see it as possibly a cheaper alternative to selling RTX 4090 performance due to it having less RAM and a smaller die. But that's one half of it, why they might want to launch that first. The other half, and I'd say much more important half, is that it can legally be sold in China, and they want to have a global Blackwell launch when it comes out. So that's right. Nvidia has been heavily impacted by the US-China trade war with a very lucrative and basically a monopoly market they've built in China under threat of Chinese domestic subsidized chip makers while being hamstrung by US sanctions. I do want to emphasize this. Obviously, the amount of people buying $1,000 or $2,000 graphics cards in China pales in comparison to the United States. But they do have like 90% of the GPU market or something in China. It's absurd how dominant they are, and they're trying to grow it. And so I think they see it as it could be seen as a snub if they launch the 5090 first, wait half a year to launch the 5080, and then China just has no new GPUs to buy. That's why they would do that. Moving forward, let me see here. As performance at the top end increases and as U.S. smartens up their sanctions regime and closes loopholes, there is little chance that the 5090 would ever be sold in China. And that's something I was told that I put in this video as well, which I didn't show a lot of quotes on screen because you can imagine the types of sources that would be confirming what's going on with the Department of Defense might be a little more sensitive to exactly what I quote. So I can say the gist of what they said, but they're like no direct quotes, no paraphrasing, nothing. But basically what I'm told, and I have been told this independently from people at NVIDIA, that they're a big enough company, they literally have contacts, that a name they can call directly at the Department of Defense to ask if this stuff can happen. They were told, the 5090 obviously can't be sold, if the 4090 couldn't be. And do not try any of this 5090D bullshit. Like, it will not, no, it doesn't matter how much you cut it down. We're not allowing that to be sold into China. And I think it's interesting then when you look at the specs of the RTX 5080, which a lot of people have said must not be correct because they're so much smaller. Yeah, it's almost like it's built to be able to be sold in China, isn't it, everybody? In fact, in that video where I cover this, I noted that as long as those specs are clocked below, I believe it was 2.97 gigahertz, they are basically at 4090D levels of compute, which is pretty much exactly where we would expect it to be, clocked to around 2.8 gigahertz or something. So, yeah, I guess that's basically it. I'll stop rambling, Dan. What did you think about all this?
The whole China angle makes sense to me, but I also think it's interesting that if they're targeting 4090 power levels as what they want to open their new series with, I think that also kind of that aligns with a thread that this channel has been talking about for a while now, that maybe not that many people are interested in having something more powerful than a 4090, and what people would rather see is some 4090 level performance at a cheaper price level than getting something, I don't know, 50 or 60% stronger than a 4090 with the 5090, because frankly, nobody really needs that at this point, unless you're, I don't know, a researcher.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not sure that I have that much else to say. I've openly said multiple times that I know some OEMs that know a decent amount of stuff about this. I know some people testing some, Blackwell dies. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, people involved in laptop, they definitely know the memory configurations of, well, 202 and lower. But when it comes to AIBs, they pretty much know the gist of the 5090, I think. But they, at least as of a couple weeks ago, they knew nothing about the 5080. No preparations, nothing. Meaning that the 5090 could have launched possibly, I think, in July. But if it's launching after the 5080, I don't think the 5080 is going to be ready until very end of Q3 if it's a paper launch, or I don't know, yeah, like October or something, and then the 5090 like a week later, so they can have their global launch in every country.
Well, I mean, yeah, October, late September, early October seems to be the hot period for the past several years for when all of the big launches are announced. So I don't know if it will be a real launch or a paper launch, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some big unveiling like on September 26th or some similar date, because that's when they always seem to announce stuff these days.
It's so funny how often too they seem to want to launch it sooner, and then they're always like, nope, same time. We never can. There's always something that it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if it's just a coincidence or what, but I mean, Q3 is a good month to the end of Q3 is a good month to announce stuff too, though, because that's right getting into the lead up of holiday season, and it's at the beginning of like the school year. I don't know. I think that's a good period to launch stuff to, anyways.
Oliver 1350 writes in and says, what is the typical dev cycle for a GPU die? Like when will or did RDNA 5 go from simulation to early silicon testing and so on? I'm trying to tease out when the earliest start to generation begins relative to release of its 1 to 2 predecessor generations. I mean, if I think about it, right, because RDNA 3 came out at the end of 2022, and then I don't remember exactly when I got the info before I leaked it, but I mean, it was pretty much like I had entire diagrams, remember, a big RDNA 4 by then, like a few months after RDNA 3, which was planned to come out in 2024. So, I mean, if you think about that, yeah, it's about 3 to 4 years. Like, yeah, there's the high level, and there's high level concept stuff going on before that too.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as like actual silicon, like testing samples existing, I feel like,
well, it depends.
Yeah, stuff usually starts to leak out, probably 6 months to a year before it comes out. I mean, it's pretty variable. Sometimes there isn't really even that many leaks that come out about it too.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, really well guarded stuff.
When I mean leak, I mean like something shows up on like Geekbench or something weird like that.
Yeah, all of that stuff usually happens about 6 months before launch. I mean, otherwise, I mean, yeah, you see some die shots of things you see years before they come out if it's Intel, but then if it's Nvidia, my memory is like I know I leaked some of Lovelace's dies first, and they were basically after they were announced. So it just depends how well guarded they are and how well the testing is going.
Yeah, and then Gigabyte, our MSI or Asus accidentally puts out the names of everything like randomly. I mean, that's not silicon, but that usually happens several months before something comes out. One of the AIBs publishes everything on their website because I guess they just don't care. But
well, I also think it's worth mentioning that like sometimes things leak out extra early because I don't know how it happened, but someone was able to get through the security protocols or didn't care if they were fired. Like I leaked out Cinebench results, remember, for Zen 5 Turin. I mean, over a year ago, I believe. Maybe it was 2 years ago. I don't remember. It was a while ago. And when I leaked those out, yeah, the guy had physical silicon. But at this test lab, like I've heard about these early test systems that require like 2 USBs that basically are electronic keys and a special BIOS, and you can't bring your phone in there, and there's no cameras. Like this is early testing in AMD. And then I think once they send it off to get verified by like OEM or OEM partners, they know it's probably going to leak. And once AIBs are testing it for desktop, it's out. All of it's going to leak. And so it's like, I think sometimes we get it earlier, but you usually don't, not because they don't have it sooner, Oliver, but because I mean, it's
for
so
one reason or another,
down.
it just doesn't leak out sometimes at that stage.
Because of how hard it is
Yeah.
it would be to get it out. Unless you're Intel, then everyone leaks all the time.
Yeah, but once you're to the AIB stage, or where AIB has stuff, that AIBs are the leakiest channels out there. But
Well, and I want to be very clear about that as well. I mean, I literally have not just people at AIBs, but people who work with AIBs say people at Nvidia and AMD actually say to me, we know once we tell AIBs it leaks. So we just don't tell them stuff anymore. And I know it makes their job harder, but if it, we just know within a week, everything will be divulged once we talk to our AIBs. So, all right. Well, speaking of OEMs and AIBs, let us move on to story number 2. Dell XPS roadmap leak confirms Moore's Law is dead's leak that Intel is behind AMD in release cadence. Quoting from video cards with a little bit of editorialization, we came across a presentation by chance. It seems someone has shared the entire product development presentation, which spans 300 pages. One of the first slides reveals Dell's plans for the next 3 years. This is the first presentation that lists new Panther Lake and Nova Lake laptops. According to the XPS roadmap, Dell is planning to refresh its laptops with Arrow Lake H in 2025. At the same, just like this channel leaked. At the same time, Nvidia is expected to launch its new Gen XX architecture, presumably RTX 50 Blackwell, which will also be used for the XPS update. I've been saying Blackwell launching beginning of 2025 in laptop. The XPS 13 Tributo, which has already been released with Meteor Lake H28, will first be updated to Qualcomm Snapdragon X series and later to Intel Lunar Lake MX. That's crazy, by the way. Intel should be scared of that.
I'm very curious to see
the people I talk to at Dell are really excited about Qualcomm as well, by the way.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, I'm just really curious to see what the Tributo model looks like what the reviews will look like back to back to back as they go from Intel to Qualcomm back to Intel in 3 model years.
3 models in 1 year.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
And then in 2026, Dell will once again update the Diablo chassis with Panther Lake H processors and will introduce 2 new laptops, the XPS 14 Hurricane with Panther Lake PX40 and the Qualcomm Snapdragon X Gen 2, expected to hit 40-watt TDPs. Alongside this update, XPS 13 Diva laptop targeting half of that TDP. And then also it mentions, of course, that they have AMD at the very end of the roadmap, which is a huge deal.
In 2027, right?
Yeah. And so there you go. This does seem to be a genuine leak from Dell, and video cards should be commended in this case for finding it. Information contained confirms Moore's Law is dead's Intel leaks about everything from Lunar Lake being pushed to launch as soon as possible, through Arrow Lake truly launching in 2025, all the way to Panther Lake really being in 2026, and Nova Lake being lucky to launch at the end of 26 in desktop, and definitely being a 2027 laptop release. And I think this is important because I saw some people in the Moore's Law is dead Discord say, wait, why is this big news? This seems like stuff we already knew. And it was stuff I already knew, but people need to remember that Intel has been sharing these roadmaps, making it look like Panther Lake launches in 2025 for a while now. And it's just horseshit, constant horseshit.
And Panther Lake is coming in then a year. Well, I guess maybe if you're trying
Lunar Lake
charitably 6 months later or something. But
Lunar Lake is like NQ3 and Q4 this year. And then basically, a year or so after that, Panther Lake should be ready.
I mean, to me, it does to an extent look like through the next 2 years, Dell is kind of scrambling to get all of their models with the correct CPU in it, because they're jumping between 3 different CPUs in a single year, which I don't know, seems a bit all over the place to me. But
yeah, but so I don't know that we actually have that much really to discuss about this, considering this is stuff our channel's been talking about for a while now. But I do just want to ask, what do you think about the fact that it is confirmed? Let's outline this. Zen 5 launches in a few months, maybe 2 months.
Yeah.
And then Arrow Lake really isn't launching until the end of this year. I don't want to hear anyone freaking bring up Lunar Lake. Lunar Lake is a low-end competitor. It's not going to do shit to Strix point. It's 4 big cores. Get out of here. This is not something that remotely compares to Strix. In fact, I'm not even sure if it will compete well against Kraken, let alone Strix. And then after that, what do we have? Well, I mean, basically just Arrow Lake against Zen 5, even though it's launching after it for a bit. But then we have all Strix Halo and all this other stuff. And I hear Zen 6 could still be mid to late 2025. And it's still just Arrow Lake. And then that's it. It's just still Arrow Lake until like 2027. I don't get how Intel's going to withstand this.
I mean, to me, it looks like at least Dell isn't betting on Intel because they're now diversifying into, having Snapdragon as part of their regular lineup, or they at least will for the next couple years. And then they're trying to transition, at least to some extent, to having AMD CPUs in the far future. I mean, to me, it looks like, Intel couldn't meet their end of the deal that Dell required, so they now have a bunch of they're now filling out their lineup with a bunch of other CPUs and putting Intel in the mix when Intel's available.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think the takeaway really is like a lot of people are focused on AMD. Other people are focused, AMD being on the roadmap. Other people are focused on Qualcomm showing it multiple times. I think the story is Dell is trying to use anyone else because they just don't feel confident in betting on Intel completely. A Hollow Knight writes in and says, could the recent leak that Dell will be using AMD CPUs in 2027? Although I do want to be clear, I think that's kind of like a placeholder, but it's still significant that they're openly saying we might use them. I don't think it really confirms it. Is this due to AMD using an Intel node, or could it be fabricated at Intel to satisfy Dell's needs to practically be an Intel-only OEM? No, I don't think any of that. I don't think there's any need for conspiracy theories here about why this is there. I think it's literally like the significance, of that one Xbox leak where Xbox showed ARM or Zen 7 or whatever they said. Remember Zen 6? I remember what they said on that slide. And a lot of people were like, oh my God, Microsoft's definitely going to use ARM no, the significance is Microsoft doesn't even seem to know what they want to do with Xbox in the future. And I would say the same here. Them listing AMD in the distant future on a roadmap next to Intel doesn't mean they're planning to switch to AMD. It means they know they might not be using Intel anymore. But that's still significant.
Yeah, I know. And I don't know how do you know how tied together Dell and Intel are with each other? I mean, I know they're big partners, but is there like an in perpetuity Dell is supposed to only use Intel products, or is it they have a contract going through, who knows, 25, 26 or whatever?
Well, Dan, officially they would never do anything like that. But
sorry, you're right. Yeah.
But unofficially, I mean, I don't know. I still kind of hear that basically Dell gets some kind of gray
sweetheart deal or something.
Yeah, they're getting some kind of a gray market or gray line, borderline, illegal rebate thing going on. Like Intel's still basically paying them off, is what I hear. And Intel still just climbs head over heels to help them design their stuff, and so they feel they have no real reason to switch. And I have that corroborated by people I talk to at Dell. Like they basically just keep saying, no, we plan to use Intel for mostly everything. Although I gotta say, for people who work at Dell, they're making fun of Intel a lot more than they used to. So you can see it's starting to buckle even there. Jensen Wang, great leader and CEO, says, it's been said that Dell is Intel's best friend that many can buy, but they also oddly seem to be the only company who consistently has always seemed to carry highest end AMD dedicated graphics cards in their laptops. Is AMD giving them a hell of a deal, or is it something else? Well, number one, yes, I bet AMD is giving them a good deal to put them in Alienwares. But number two, Radeon isn't Ryzen. I think Intel doesn't want Dell to use AMD CPUs, and this is, a GPU.
Yeah, but I doubt they care as much. Like, I mean, you see the similar thing happening with, this is like 4 years ago now, but like Nvidia's big AI GPU that they had in 2020. I can't even think of what it's called anymore off the top of my head. But
A100?
Yeah, A100. Like, I believe they were selling those with Epic CPUs. It's like, because the CPUs don't directly compete with their GPU business, so why would they care?
Mm-hmm.
But Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, and the only other thing I was going to say is if someone jumps in here and says, well, wait a second, Intel makes graphics cards too. No, they don't, guys. No, they don't. If you ask OEMs, Intel doesn't make graphics cards. If you ask OEMs, they don't want to market ARC. If they put an ARC sticker on a laptop, they know that's a sticker that might as well say, don't buy this laptop. So from an OEM's perspective, they do not regard ARC as even existing. Let's just be very clear about that. I know they won't say that publicly, but the designers I talk to, they're like, ARC? No, it's Nvidia, maybe AMD. And we're more interested in AMD APUs than their GPUs right now.
Yeah. I mean, when did these, I guess they only feel so long ago to me now, but I guess they did only technically launch 2 years ago, even if it fails, like we've been talking about Alchemist for 30.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Feels like 30 years of having to talk about this. This piece of content is brought to you by FlexiSpot and their roster of high-quality adjustable standing desks. As many of you know, I recently moved into a new house in Nashville, and this entire time, the desk inside of my guest room, one that Dan uses whenever he visits, is the FlexiSpot E7. And actually, when he goes home, he still uses a FlexiSpot desk as well, and that's because, genuinely, we use a lot of FlexiSpot products around here because they make fantastic high quality products. I mean, specifically their desks are made with high quality bamboo that allows for incredible weight support and durability against all types of would-be destroyers. And they come with an advanced one-touch LED control panel with 3 programmable buttons for different height levels, and you can customize your desk with your preferred color and size and the desk frame itself, and they have just so many options to get the perfect desk for you. And really, I do mean it when I say that everything they have sent us so far, whether it's a floating moon lamp, a desktop organizing gear, or just a office chair, I'm using one right now, it's all high quality, and it's been a pleasure to continue working with them for many years because of this. So follow the directions and click the link in the description to support Moore's Law is Dead during FlexiSpot's brand day sale that lasts till May 27th. And if you do that, you'll be both supporting the channel and also getting yourself the best possible deal on their products. So check out FlexiSpot today. All right, let us now move on to something that is in no way like Alchemist, as far as I can tell, with story number 3. Apple introduces the M4. From Apple's press release, and then some stuff added at the end, the new iPad Pro is made possible with the new M4 chip, a next generation of Apple Silicon, which delivers a huge leap in performance and capabilities. M4 features an entirely new display engine to enable the precision, color, and brightness of the Ultra Retina XDR display with a new CPU, a next generation GPU, builds upon the GPU architecture debuted in M3, and the most powerful neural engine yet where? From who? But the new iPad Pro is an outrageously powerful device for artificial intelligence. Indeed, the M4 is another impressive showing from Apple. And in fact, this time, what arguably should amaze you the most is just how much they've seemed to cram into 28 billion transistors compared to the M3, which had barely less, 25 billion transistors. Just going from 25 to 28 billion transistors, they've added 2 more E-cores, 400 megahertz higher clocks on both the P and E cores, a 25% bigger iGPU, and an NPU overclocked to offer double the tops of its predecessor. The microarchitecture of the big course hasn't changed that much, but they have gone from 3.2 gigahertz on M1 to 4.4 gigahertz now. So in many ways, one could argue that like Zen, a new Zen comes out every 2 years, a new M chip every year, that Apple seems to be kind of just driving for like a Zen 3 to Zen 4 approach with every generation so far. Mm-hmm. Modest IPC gains, higher clocks every single time. And then with small changes made to allow it to run faster. So as for the node, though, Apple now uses the better and cheaper N3E node instead of N3B, the node that will be TSMC's cash cow for decades as the best FinFET process and the node AMD and Nvidia will use for the 3nm products. I do think this is worth highlighting here that N3E is seemingly I think that might be the story. I think this points to N3E clearly being like a 30% better node than the other version of 3nm or something.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I don't know how else you can explain it. It's impressive how much more they were able to pack in with from a silicon level, barely any more transistors. Even if I think based on what some people were hyping themselves up about with the neural engine, are going to be disappointed. But
Yeah, because I think, wasn't that on the last Die Shrink that someone asked, are they going to double Strix's tops? No. This
No,
is 38. Strix is going to be at least 45. This is done.
Yeah, I mean, 38, I think, is... I don't remember if I said that in the episode that we recorded, but I remember thinking about when reading that question, or when thinking about like what I would say to answer that question. This is the level that I think... This is the minimum level that they could have given you, but without it being an outright disappointment for their neural engine. Because their neural engine wasn't all that impressive back then anyways, and this new one is just... Yeah, I mean, it's keeping in line with the rest of the hardware that's about to come out. But to be fair to it, it is the hardware that's about to come out. You can, if I understand correctly, you can buy the new iPad right now. So, or
True.
You're going to be able to buy it soon. So
true. No, that's very true. You can buy it now, and so it's really competing with Meteor Lake and Hawk Point for now, I guess. Although Strix might come out in a few months. Although you could argue, if
Strix truly comes out, if AMD comes out and they say like they have a partnership where they are going to have laptops coming out by like in actual numbers by like August, then I don't think there's much to talk about here. But I think the problem with AMD a lot of the time when they're talking about their new laptop CPUs is they announce them and then you don't see them for like 3 or 4 months in actual products, at least.
Right. Like if they announce it at Computex, they say it's coming out Q3 and you really can't buy it till December. At that point, it's really just in between the release of M4 and M5. So,
Yeah, so it's 20%-ish weaker than the neural engine that they have in Strix, and it's coming out sooner. So Apple can't say that you can't say that Apple failed expectations, but I don't think they exceeded them at all. 38 tops is just, that's the range you expect from a neural engine coming out this year.
Yeah, coming out after Hawk Point, but before Strix. All right. Let us then move on here. Bfish36 writes in and he says, is AMD really pulling an Intel and rebranding again after the pushback on their last rebranding? Ryzen AI 100, I mean, seriously? Well, that's story number 4. Is AMD about to copy Intel's ultra stupid naming convention? So recently, there has been both rumors of AMD using the 8050 naming convention from a Lenovo leak, and then also rumors of AMD using the AI 9100 moniker, which would be copying, of course, Intel Ultra's 100 naming convention from an Asus leak. In a recent video, this channel broke down the 2 options that seem most logical regarding what's going on here. The first option, AMD might, yes, be copying Intel's new naming scheme. And if AMD is just straight up copying Intel's Ultra 100 series by launching an AI 100 series, I do think that's stupid. If that is all they are going to do, it needlessly adds more confusion to a naming scheme that I see so many people already complaining about online, although I think it's easy to tell what CPU you're buying compared to other naming schemes. But if they change it again, then it will only be remembered as stupid. And I think half the reason it's confusing is because of how often they change it. And if they do that, to me, it just feels like the 7900 XT all over again, where AMD sees a competitor do something and thinks, well, that must be a good idea. Like when they made the 7900 XT and XTX, instead of calling them different names, like Nvidia was going to do it the 4080 1612 gigabyte, but then Nvidia canceled the 4080 12 gigabyte because it was just a dumb idea. So I think that's possible. Let's leave it there. But then the other option I think people may want to consider is that perhaps Asus accidentally hinted that an AI 100 series is just some Z1 Extreme thing that they're getting special access to. It's entirely conceivable that AMD has special binnings of Strix. If the standard ones are 45 or 50 tops, they can overclock it to 60 tops or something, and then they can call it AI 100 or something and sell that to Asus. They actually did the same thing with Renoir. The 4900 HS was Asus exclusive for a while. So there's a history of this happening with Asus specifically as well. Although to play devil's advocate against that as well, I do also have a kind of in-between theory here to point out, which is maybe just really cut down models of Strix with underclocked AI engines are what that 8050 series is from Lenovo. I mean, the top is 12 cores. Would it really be that crazy to think that like the bad yields will be 8 cores with 12 CUs. You could still call that 8050 above 8040 with Hawkpoint. So I do think that's worth, and then they could replace that with Kraken too moving forward. I just think that's worth pointing out as well. Although the final thing I want to say is something new that I am putting into this as kind of a new small leak in this podcast is last minute I got some feedback from an additional source I didn't really use for that video that told me that they have asked all around and people are genuinely confused. In fact, this person said he still hears plenty of people call it the 9050 series. So they might still do Ryzen 9000 with it. And this person thinks that this was an intentional leak. And if you think about it, yeah, I think the Asus and Lenovo ones were on the same day, weren't they? Almost like they're doing a focus test for 2 different naming schemes. So that I do really want to throw that out there. This might just be a focus test too.
Because what your new tablet that has the 8840U, if I'm remembering correctly,
the 8840U, yeah.
Okay, because the idea of them calling what would the 8050 even be? Would that be Hawkpoint still?
No, 5 is Zen 5. So first number is generation/year. We're on 8. That's 2024. And then the next one is the tier. So 9 is highest, 8, 7, 6, And then after that, you have the architecture. And then after that, you have the distinguishing thing.
Yeah, I mean...
You see what I'm saying? And technically, I think they did go up to an 8940, which I think is... I will say this. The one thing is if they are still using all of it in 8050, which they could. I mean, they could argue all of Strix is R9. It is crazy better than everything Intel has.
I wouldn't be surprised if all of Strix is R9 or maybe Strix Point.
And then there's like one R5 that's cut down a lot.
Or maybe Strix Halo or Strix Point instead is R7. I could see them designating that at that.
Well, the Hawkpoint's already 7 and 9. I guess they could just have leapfrogging people in that, but...
Yeah, I imagine
they do that already with Phoenix and Rembrandt. So
they are at a weird place this year where, since they're going to be launching 2 different CPUs or 2 different generations basically this year, even if Hawkpoint is only really a half step, they're treating it as a full step, at least in the branding. They're kind of launching 2 gens in 1 year for laptops, so they're in a weird place where it's like, well, should we call Strix 9000 or should we keep it 8000? Or maybe they're focus testing, like you said, this really dumb idea, in my opinion, of calling it AI or whatever. I hope that they kind of just call it the 9000 series. I know that maybe it will put them in a weird spot with Zen 5, but I mean, also not really. They'll just call Zen 5 9000 series.
Yeah, well... And one thing I forgot to say in the write-up is I want to be very clear. I don't just think that like copying Intel's naming is stupid because of my own personal opinions and whatever.
Well, it is confusing.
Well, quite literally, the Ultra branding, I am told by everyone I ask, has been a complete disaster for Intel. Like, sales are down. People are confused. People don't know what they're buying. An example I give in the video that I think is a very apt one is, imagine this, Dan. Someone walks into like a Micro Center or a Best Buy, and they say, I want the latest i9 laptop. And then the rep hands them a Meteor Lake laptop, and they go, no, this says 7. I want an i9. And they go, no, this isn't an i9. This is an Ultra 7. And then they go, oh, Ultra 7, not i7? Well, is it stronger than the i9? And then they go, no.
Yeah, I know. It's
like how do you explain that to consumers? Like, they're just going to see the big 7 in white bold. They're like, they don't want the worst, but then they're like, but this is better, but it's not. It's just a disaster. It's like, so for AMD to copy this would just be idiotic.
Yeah, I mean, to me, we've talked about this before too. Like, you don't change the branding unless you've had so many generations that have burned that brand. And with Intel, I don't think the iX branding has really been burned yet, at least in laptops. I think it's definitely going that direction in desktop. But in laptop, Intel is still now getting to a point where they are being viewed as less good, but like, people still want Intel CPUs in their laptops a lot. So doing that with Ultra is introducing the Ultra branding made zero sense from Intel's perspective. And likewise, AMD isn't at their peak in their branding yet. I mean, for their their Zen branding in laptops. I think they're just reaching the point where people are really wanting to get an AMD CPU laptop. So why you would burn that branding now makes zero sense to me.
I think that's a very valid point.
Like, I don't think you change the Ryzen branding until a minimum like 2030, probably. Like that's when I could start seeing. That's when I could start seeing the Ryzen brand start to fall off. I mean, I doubt Zen 6 will be a disappointment. Maybe Zen 7 will, but
and even if they're making a special binning for Asus, which is just a theory of mine, I actually don't have any proof of that.
Yeah.
Why not just like R9 8955 AI instead of HX? Why can't you just put AI at the end instead of HX? That's so much less confusing.
It's less.
Well, you know what you're buying. It's Zen 5. It's the top of the stack. They've overclocked the AI engine, and if it's called like an AI 9 170 or something, you've no clue what you're buying. 170.
No,
what does that mean?
That's incredibly stupid. I guess I agree. Instead of putting HX, you put AI. Big eye roll.
Oh, Dan, let's be clear.
Lot better, but
you're going to have to make a compromise. They're putting AI on it, whether you like it or not.
It is something that really confuses me, though, with all of the branding that they've been doing lately with AI. Like, what focus group is finding that branding stuff as AI is super positive? Because all I find online is people making fun of things that are branded as AI or branded with AI. Like, I don't think it's been proven to the consumer that AI is of value yet. I'm not saying the average consumer is right, or me, because I don't think AI is that useful, is right in perpetuity. But I don't think it's really been proven that AI is this massive branding plus. So I don't get why they keep trying to do it. Like, maybe 3 years or 2 years down the road, it will work.
Let me wait.
Are you looking up something?
I'm literally messaging someone at an OEM if they've done any focus testing.
Because it does just confuse me why I keep seeing AI crop up in all of this stuff, because it's universally made fun of. Like, everybody thinks it's just the next marketing gimmick. So why do you keep going on with it? Are they responding?
No, I was just making sure I didn't like.
Oh, you didn't.
I was a dyslexical. I typed it all up or something, because I sometimes can be with like my blood pressure right now every now and then. But yeah, which for those wondering, I'll do a health update in another podcast. It's getting under control, and it's really stupid what may have been causing it besides stress, but we'll leave it at that for now. I think that's a very good question. I mean, obviously you just saw me type this question in real time to one of my sources, and I think I'm going to reach out to I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Okay, there's two other people that I can probably message right now. And actually, there's a chance one of them, oh, of course, great. Now that's updating. And there's a chance a couple of them may answer before we are done talking. But it almost feels like blockchain, where it's like, I get that blockchain got investors maybe interested and stuff, but I think most people just, actually, I almost feel like people make fun of AI more than blockchain.
I think the peak of making fun of blockchain was 23 or 22, right, 23.
After, like, there were issues, like, not in the beginning. Like, obviously now people might make fun of it a lot, but during its heyday, people were like oddly, wow, like, we need a blockchain to trace watermelon growth, and it was just the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Let me put that there. Let me just change this wording, because it is such an interesting thing that you're noting, that it's like before anything's proven, already people are making fun of it. Like, I don't know. And again, I think what AMD is doing right now is they've got a brand that's incredibly powerful, stronger than it's ever been. Intel's destroyed their brand. People are confused. Why shake the boat? You've got it. You've got it. You're going to take laptop. Don't fuck it up with some dumb naming thing. To be fair, I think they'll take market share no matter what. But I just think I think it would, and I actually kind of like just putting AI at the end if it's special binning because it isn't confusing. You know what you're buying. But all right.
Yeah, that's substantially less confusing.
Dark Helmet writes in and he says, do you think Lenovo will use LP Cam 2 modules, that's Cam for LPDDR5X and Strix Halo mobile workstations, since 2 modules could fill the 256-bit bus width? I just think it would be silly for Lenovo and OEMs to not try to maximize the capacity they can get. There's got to be at least one they sell with 256 gigabytes of RAM. Do it.
Yeah.
Call it Threadripper. And then also maximizing how compact they can make it be and still compete with like a mid-range laptop. Like, imagine if they made a hawk. Imagine they made like the minis for them, V3. They made something like this actually ship with Strix Halo or something. Even a 45-watt model. I mean,
if they could advertise a compact workstation, I think that would have I think that's a really big, not big niche, but I think that is a niche that definitely exists for like professionals and engineers and whatnot.
And I did just get message back from one of my sources. The person says, no, there's no killer app. Everyone thinks it's a joke. So why is every company putting AI on everything? It's like a signal to investors, not consumers.
That does feel like what it is sometimes, because I can't make any sense of it, because all I can see online, people reading about this, like the new AI quote unquote features in Windows 11, people hate because it's like, I'm glad that we've turned Microsoft Windows into games as a service model, because they're constantly advertising to you now and they're constantly trying to get you to buy their new shit. And this isn't Microsoft, but now I'm getting annoyed by Google whenever I try to use it now, because if you type a question into Google, I don't know if you've noticed this, Tom, its new Gemini thing tells you wrong information. So thank you for that, Google. Thank you. I'm glad I need to scroll further to get the link I was looking for now.
Bfish36 writes in and he says, have you heard anything about LPDDR6? Double the bandwidth of DDR5 would pay huge dividends with AMD's APUs. You said play though, Bfish. You almost messed me up. Especially like Gen 2 of Halo. Yeah, but like, isn't this what everyone said about DDR5, including me after DDR4? Here's what I know. LPDDR6, way more bandwidth than DDR5. You know what also has more? GDDR7. So whatever graphics cards are using 7, 6 is better, but it's not 7. So it feels like it's the same trajectory we've been following. And the main reason I should say that Strix Halo is bucking this trend is not because it's going to use lightning fast LPDDR5X, although it will, and that will help. But there were previous APUs that could always use faster memory. It's because they're actually going to the 256-bit bus and adding some infinity cache, which is something they haven't been doing with their APUs before. All right, let us then move on to story number 5. Zen 6 core counts confirmed. So I'll be brief. New leaks have come out that look very legitimate to me that are almost certainly confirming 32 core CCDs and 256 core EPYC chips for Zen 6. Wanted to just throw that out there. That's I think that's probably Zen 6C secretly, by the way, but there you go. So this was very last minute. I didn't have time to like really write up and explain much, but I thought it would be worth throwing in here and maybe discussing what we think about the fact that it does really seem like AMD is possibly moving to bigger core chiplets to fit more cores with less latency after Zen 5.
I mean, I don't know how much I have to say about this. I mean, 32 core CCDs on Zen 6 is a massive step forward, where I could see like people being, if that's what ends up getting into like AM5 CPUs, I imagine people might be as excited about that as they were about Zen, or as people were excited to talk about Zen 1 at least.
Yeah, what's going to be interesting, because I've recently put out some leaks about Zen 7. I've teased out things I'm hearing about Zen 6. There's a lot of talk about 2 nanometer. I do know that they're still looking at 3 nanometer for some of it as well. And I believe this league may have suggested that they still have like 8 core CCX is though. And so the question will start to become, well, okay, so what are they going to do? Are they going to use 2 16 core CCDs on AM5? Are they going to do a cheap, I think that was something that I leaked recently, right? A cheap 3 nanometer 16 or 8 core, and then the 16 2 nanometer core? Or is it just going to be one big 32 core, one big 16 core? We still don't really know because we don't know die sizes or cache. But I think it is obvious Zen 6 is going to, to me, it almost, we'll see, right? I'm hearing some things about Zen 7, but it almost to me feels like Zen 6 is the ending of Zen. Like, this is Zen 1. We made it.
You mean Zen 6 is the
ending of...
Zen 6 is the last Zen architecture, or Zen 6
It's not going to be the last Zen architecture, but it just feels like kind of... Well, yeah, like Zen 1, we made it. Zen 2, we did it. We have real chiplets with different types of chiplets. Zen 3, unified CCXs, 8-core CCXs, massively better latency. Zen 4, it's almost 6 gigahertz. Zen 5, we scaled with AVX better, and that kind of seems most of like what it is, and we have better floating point. And then Zen 6, Zen 5 is we've honed the architecture is the idea. And then Zen 6 is, all right, made it, chiplets, latency, speed, honed. And now we're finally doing something with the packaging that removes the latency issues we had before. After that, I wonder what they'll do, because I really would expect Zen 7 to be, I guess we'll see, right? A Zen 7 to be a lot more like how would I compare it? Like a Zen 4-ish situation, where it's like much more iterative than they were ambitious with Zen 2 and Zen 6.
Yeah, I know. It's just, what I'm saying is Zen 6, based on this, sounds like it could feel like the opening to the new book. And Zen 5,
even though it's really closing the book and opening a new one. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to discuss about that. I just thought we had to get that in here.
No, not really. I mean, that Zen 6 is a ways out, so I think we'll be talking about it a lot in the next year, but I don't think there's much to say yet.
Yeah, I mean, the only teasers I'll give is it's coming, guys. I do think it's probably coming next year still, so that's exciting.
I'm hopeful for that then.
Yeah, I mean, that'll probably be the one I want to get, We'll see. So far, Zen 3 is going fine, but who knows if some game comes out finally that just crushes it. Although I doubt it as long as the consoles are around. Ever feel like a dog chasing its tail as you scour dozens of eBay postings and CD websites looking for a safe way to get reasonably priced Microsoft software? Well, you don't have to do that. Just go to cdkeyoffer.com. This piece of content is sponsored by cdkeyoffer.com that offers both Microsoft operating systems, Office products, select games, and even some gaming hardware peripherals for reasonable prices. And they've been a sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead and the entire team here for years for a reason. They've been good to me. They've been good to Dan. They've been good to dozens of me and Dan's family members and friends for years now. And they've also been good to the Moore's Law is Dead community. So whether you're looking for Steam, EA, Uplay, or PlayStation keys, or of course Microsoft products or gaming peripherals, support Moore's Law is Dead by using the offer code BrokenSilicon for 25% off all Microsoft products and Die Shrink for 3% off everything else on the website. Support Moore's Law is Dead by supporting one of our best long-term sponsors, cdkeyoffer.com today. All right, let us move on then to story number 6. AMD Sound Wave leaked to utilize ARM, not x86. Last week, this channel put out a leak that detailed that AMD is considering releasing an APU with a CPU that utilizes ARM instead of x86, and it is called Sound Wave. Besides that, details are a bit scarce. Besides, well, I can confirm this. It is targeting 2026 for release. It has powerful accelerators and a strong NPU, and it's being built to take back the ARM Surface models from Qualcomm. And that's pretty much it for now. AMD is continuing its so far futile quest to make Microsoft Senpai notice them and finally use their chip seriously in Surface. Will it work this time? We can't say. It's really early and the project is heavily monitored by AMD management. In fact, I really do infer that AMD management doesn't want this to have any of the delays or the issues that Strix had that we've discussed on this channel multiple times, and that they realize that this will be a successful product if it hits its design goals or exceeds them, and if it comes out on time. If it doesn't, it looks stupid. If they're like, our first ARM chip, it sucks compared to Apple, that would look really bad. But if it comes out before like whatever it is, 6
5.
or whatever,
or it might be M6. Yeah, okay.
I don't know. Whatever the upcoming, if it can like precede Apple's newest M chip by 3 to 6 months and crush the previous one and be competitive with the next one, that'd be such a signal to investors that AMD can do anything, and it's not about x86 or ARM. Because really a lot of people think the big story of ARM is that it's incredibly efficient, but it's really just that's the story people keep hearing. The truth is that ISAs have a smaller impact than most people think. ARM has a minor advantage in power at very low TDPs, but a lot of its power efficiency, no one seems to get this, is probably down to software like Android and Apple's ecosystem that have many features to help achieve good battery life because they're built for mobile first. And then also Windows cannot adopt as optimized software because it has a messy ecosystem with really old backwards compatibility. Like, I think there's an honest argument to be made that Windows may be working on trying to have an ARM version of their operating system because they know that version won't have all the bugs and issues of their other version. And by virtue of that, will just be more efficient. It's not ARM. It's the ARM operating system isn't old. Like, and a parallel to this I would make would be when Brian, I think it was it Brian Heemskirk, or I'll have to look it up. It was either Brian Heemskirk or one of the other devs that was on when I asked, like, why is Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition like so much less buggy than the other version? And they said, well, they built it from the ground up for ray tracing, so it probably just doesn't have as many issues. And I think people don't understand that when they look at like ARM operating systems. Yeah, they're newer. They don't have backwards compatibility to like 30, 40 years ago. And so they don't need to worry about any of this crap. But anyways, that might be the play that Microsoft is making with ARM. The other thing I just want to say is I genuinely think that AMD is building an ARM APU simply because they know it will fill a niche in their lineup and make investors go crazy, more so than it's them thinking they actually need ARM for anything more than making a Switch 3 APU for Nintendo or something. Because again, I think they can do almost anything with x86 that you can do with ARM. But they do get asked about it every earnings call from investors. And I do think it would be such a marketing win if they launch an ARM chip that's better than Apple, because then they can say it doesn't matter what the future holds. We'll make the best CPU.
I mean, yeah, that would be big from a marketing perspective. I mean, I don't quite understand why AMD is pursuing ARM from like just an objective or just from like a sheer hardware perspective, because I think Zen 5 is going fine as it is. But if some client really wants to go hard into ARM, and Microsoft seems to want to go hard into ARM right now, yeah, I guess I can see why you would try to develop something.
Well, another thing to be pointed out is that, and I do think this is fair, some customers just want ARM. They want an ARM chip. Like, there's a good chance that they designed at least early high concept levels for an ARM Switch 2 APU because Nintendo insisted on direct backwards compatibility. And I think AMD may have realized, if you think about when that would have happened, that would have been like 2 or 3 years ago, and now Sound Wave's 2026. That was probably when AMD realized we need an ARM offering. We just need an ARM offering to prove, number one, that we can do it, but also just so customers don't ignore us because we use x86. Some customers, they just want ARM. Doesn't matter if they're right or wrong. That's what they want. Do we want to be right, or do we want to make money? So that would make sense why they would be designing this, I think, as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you give the customer what you want. I mean, I think it remains to be seen how successful ARM on Windows really will be, because we really don't actually have an example of what that will look like yet. I mean,
not really.
The Elite X is going to be out at some point eventually, maybe, I think. I don't really know anymore. I feel like it's just been being teased for 8 months, but no one will actually show you one. I mean, I think something is supposed to come out tomorrow about it, so hopefully we'll be impressed. But I'm curious if the Elite X is just another CPU on the market.
X Elite, Dan. How dare you say Elite X?
If the X Elite is just another thing on the market, I'm curious how fast people are going to lose interest in it.
Well, even if they're unveiling this, when this podcast comes out, it's going to take weeks to fully analyze it. So
That's true.
We'll see what happens. And if I think there's something interesting, I'll just do a video on it. But Techno writes in and he says, is AMD going to use an ARM architectural license in Sound Wave? Are they going to use the ARM prefabricated cores? Honestly, Techno, I don't know. I think it's entirely plausible either way. I mean, there's evidence the K12 project was never entirely killed at AMD. That was their ARM core project. And it's also plausible that they're just taking off-the-shelf licensed ARM cores and then tweaking or not tweaking them and adding their own stuff, which in that scenario, I do think it's worth pointing out, that'd be very easy to do. Take ARM IP blocks that they can license and then just bolt on Radeon, Neural Engine, and a few other things. My God, the sneeze face, Dan.
Sorry.
We'll have to leave that in. But no, but like it's like
that almost makes more sense to me if they're not doing their own bespoke architecture and they're just bolting on some IP.
What if it's
block
just
they
like
have
the
with
same
an ARM
CPU that Nvidia is using in Orin, basically,
and
like
putting on some GPU block for it to make an SoC?
Yeah, and then they add
sense.
Whatever their modern Radeon iGPU SoC IP block will be at the time. A bunch. I've heard of they're gonna market the Xilinx accelerators a lot. Like they have all of this stuff in their portfolio where they go, look, yeah, everyone's the same. ARM's the same. It doesn't matter. Apple can say they're special, but like, look at us. We're like 5% weaker. Our GPU's better. Our neural engines. Everything else is better, and this is cheaper. You don't need Apple Silicon, right? So I think that might be a marketing play there as well. But I don't know. I just think that either way. It would be interesting if they're fully designing grounds up in ARM architecture, though. I guess that would be kind of crazy.
That would be more exciting if that's what Sound Wave was. But I didn't think that they might. I just didn't think about the fact that they could just be outsourcing a different architecture.
Yeah, and you would think that their first outing, but 2026 is a bit from now. You'd almost think like they would just try to rush out the door a bog standard model now to test the waters and see if anyone actually wants it. But if they're putting all this effort into it, and I'm being told management is like really, really looking into this, like overwatching this one, that it might be a bit more than that. But I don't know. We'll just have to see. Alrighty. So let me see here. I guess I'll move this to green since it uses Nvidia with story number 7. Nintendo confirms the Switch 2 is coming in under a year, and Moore's Law's Dead Switch leaks have seemingly been corroborated. So Shintaro Furukawa, president of Nintendo, he just put out a statement. He says, "This is Furukawa, president of Nintendo. We will make an announcement about the successor to the Nintendo Switch within this fiscal year. It will have been over 9 years since we announced the existence of the Switch back in 2015. We'll be holding a Nintendo Direct this June regarding the Nintendo Switch software lineup for the latter half of 2024. But please be aware, there will be no mention of the Nintendo Switch successor during said presentation." Also quoting from Notebook Check, "Details of the Switch 2's hardware components have been unearthed from Nintendo's shipping and customs records, suggesting a serious spec upgrade. The new device is expected to get 12 gigabytes of RAM," that's what I said it would have, "and 7,500 mega transfer RAM. That's how it will be clocked at. And then 256 gigabytes of storage, as well as a microphone." So, yep, Nintendo confirmed they will announce the successor to the Switch this fiscal year. To be fair, though, their fiscal year runs to March. So the announcement could still technically come in quarter 2 of 2025 or like on the borderline of that. Technically, but it is still good to hear that the wait for the Switch won't be as long as the wait for Half-Life 3. So the tweet seems odd. It promises the new Switch will be announced soon, but warns the upcoming Nintendo Direct will be purely about the current Switch. Almost like Nintendo is trying to preempt any possible anger from not announcing it while trying to make it sound like it's on the horizon, although it doesn't really seem like it is. Meanwhile, Notebook Check confirmed Moore's Law leaks the Switch successors going off information from the family boards. Members of the family boards discovered some... sorry, kind of repeating myself here. I'm seeing if there's anything else I missed. Yeah. And it uses UFS storage. So there you go. The specs of the Switch 2 that I leaked, which a lot of people, which I basically said, I don't think it's going to be cut down. I think it is going to be clocked a lot faster than you guys get in docked mode. And I think it will have at least 12 gigabytes RAM. All correct. Confirmed now. And it will be announced soon. What do you think, Dan?
Oh, yeah. I mean, 12 gigabytes of RAM points to it being an, I would say, capable system. I mean, obviously, you would hope for 16, but I don't know if they need it. 12 is probably enough. And I think that will be enough for it to be able to keep up. It sounds like that will be enough for it to be able to keep up with modern systems, even if it's markedly weaker than both the PS5 and Series X.
Mm-hmm.
Although, still crossing my fingers that it's stronger than a Series S.
Well, in docked mode,
be.
I think their target, I was told months ago, was 4 teraflops in docked mode.
Okay.
And who knows? Maybe they pushed it above that. It's plausible they did, especially if they move to a new node. Which, on that note, Techno writes in, the original Switch got a node jump from 20 nanometer to 16 and 12. 16/12 nanometer, which brought way better power efficiency and overall reduced the cost. For the Switch successor, well, they will originally start on 8 nanometer, or at least they were planning to. They were, 100% they were. I wouldn't be surprised if they switched to N4C in mid to late 2025 or early 26. Well, at that point, they should just use it, which should double the density, will only be about 40% more expensive for wafer. So worst case scenario should be the same cost as 8 nanometer, presuming a worst case scenario of 165, blah, blah, blah. He says, what do you think the chances are of the Switch successor having a mid-gen refresh to go on a better node than the original did? Well, I actually answer this question to go, because I've seen people suggest, is there a chance that this thing is not going to be on 8 nanometer at this point? And I say, yeah, I think there is. I mean, I would more so suggest that they would probably go for a smaller Samsung node to have, again, lower cost, more capacity. It's also a small die, relatively speaking. So Samsung can work. Although I guess I don't know how small it is exactly, but like, if they could get it down to almost smartphone size with a better node, yeah, why not? I don't know about TSMC though. They could, not saying they couldn't, but I do know 100% the original plan was 8 nanometer. However, the original plan, I believe, was to have this thing freaking launch in 2023. And people I talked to at Nvidia are very confused why it isn't out yet. So I would almost suggest if it is coming out 2 years later than even people I talked to at Nvidia expected, that almost does make me wonder if there is a node shrink here.
There almost has to be a level of hardware redesign at some point, right?
I would think so, right? Especially if it, like Techno points out, at a certain point, if you wanted the best nodes a year or two ago, like Apple did with N3 base, it just cost more and wasn't that much better. But now they've improved the nodes and TSMC is charging less and making them even more efficient to produce. You're kind of dumber if you're using older nodes in 2025, I would say.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's entirely plausible. And going back to your question, like, well, if they did do that, maybe they can get away with like 4.5 teraflops, which, an ampere teraflop is not as good as an RDNA 2 teraflop, usually, really. But so what? We got 4, I think it is, or 4.2, something like that. So you have a similar amount of teraflops. It should be worse, but then you have DLSS on top of it and a few other tweaks in there. Yeah, I think you could, and it has a little more RAM, which is huge than the Series S. I think you're going to see this thing in docked mode in a lot of games perform like a Series S. But again, CPU is way weaker. So there will be times where, like, if a Call of Duty's on the Switch too, which why wouldn't it be? I'm curious if that 60 hertz mode is going to run very well. I bet there's going to be frame drops, but I would also not be surprised if its resolution was higher than the Series S, or perceived at least resolution.
Yeah. And I don't know. And then back to like the weirdness of the announcement. Part of me wonders if that's just, there's been a lot of discussion on why the hell the Switch 2 hasn't been announced yet. And I bet if I wonder if they're just like, let's just preempt this. We know our Nintendo. We're trying to get out our last salvo for the Switch with the Nintendo Direct, and people are gonna think it's weird if we continue to not bring up the Switch 2. Let's just preempt this and say, don't worry, guys, it's coming.
Yeah,
and that's all this is.
And it will be announced soon, but not at our next event.
But by the end of quarter this fiscal year, which might be 10 months from now. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would expect. To me, this sounds like they're planning on announcing it in like February or something, and it comes out mid next year or late next year.
I think this is a good question to round this out, actually. Do you think they should launch it this fall or early next year?
I think they should.
The PS5 Pro comes out this fall. So does Blackwell, RDNA 4.
Well, I mean, I think they should launch it as early as they can, is my immediate thought. But I don't know if they have a decent amount of stuff they need to get out on the Switch. I think it's better to let the Switch breathe its last breath before they get the Switch
true.
out.
They have all these games they've announced. I think they have by the way, they have like a remaster with more content in the 1,000-Year Door of Paper Mario coming out.
That's cool.
At this point, Nintendo, I'm sorry. I refuse to get your overpriced Switch. I might get the successor and play it on there, though, but no.
Yeah.
But yeah, because it's like the ROG, we'll get to this. Ally X isn't really that much better. I don't remember when the Steam Deck 2 is supposed to come out. I think that's probably not till late 25 or late 26. So it's like, if you can launch a full year before the Steam Deck successor and a few other things, you might want to. But it is a very good point that they've got like a lot of games coming out this fall, and they probably just want to use that to sell off the rest of their consoles. Because again, I think it's going to have very direct backwards compatibility, and I don't think that there's really going to be a point in still selling the Switch once this comes out, much like the PS5 after the PS4. And so, yeah, they probably just want to let it breathe. But I would say as early as you can in 25, like March.
Yeah, if they can.
All right. Let us now move on finally to the final story. We have many stories in this episode. With story number 8, Xbox shuts down Arkane, Tango Gameworks, Alpha Dogs, and the meltdown is just insane online right now. Quoting from The Verge, in an email to staff sent this morning, head of Xbox Game Studios, Matt Booty, announced the closure of several game studios, including Redfall developer Arkane Austin, Hi-Fi Rush developer Tango Gameworks, Alpha Dog Games, and more. According to the email, as first reported by IGN, Booty wrote that the reason for the closures was due to a reprioritization of titles and resources. Some staff at the affected studios will be relocated, while other studios will completely shut down. The fact that MS closed the studio after saying Hi-Fi Rush was a hit, that just tells you that they may just be lying about what's going well and what's not. And yeah, after Microsoft's mad dash to acquire, a crash was to be expected, or if we want to be sweet to Microsoft, consolidated. We have seen this before. We saw layoffs at Activision and elsewhere. We heard that the entire industry is shedding employees after the pandemic-driven gaming boom. When the entire industry is in a churn, Xbox does seem to be particularly weak. They expanded like a red giant in hopes of delivering on Phil Spencer's crazy Game Pass projections. Look at where it got them. They've been forced to release their exclusives on PlayStation. Now they're closing studios. I don't know. Another interesting angle to this story is that reportedly, this wasn't Phil Spencer's decision. Neither was multi-platforming their first-party games. It increasingly seems that Phil Spencer lost confidence of his Microsoft that Phil Spencer has had his confidence lost by Microsoft's higher-ups, and he's being sidelined for any big strategic decisions. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that I called it was over the second that Xbox leak happened, and all the Xbox channels did damage control, or should I say fanboy channels. Not all of them. Some of them are reasonable. But the Xbox fanboy channels, it was just full damage control mode of, well, he said they're going multi-platform, but he didn't. Guys, in that Xbox leak, they said their business model doesn't work.
Yeah, and to an addendum to like them saying speaking through both sides of their mouth with like Hi-Fi Rush being a hit. It could be that based on their metrics, like whatever Netflix style metrics they've developed to judge how a game works on Game Pass, maybe Hi-Fi Rush was a complete hit. It superseded anything that they were expecting. But maybe that still means they didn't make any money by the other people's metrics that are starting to pull power from Phil Spencer, which that sucks for Tango Gameworks and the, competent devs that work there. Hopefully they find a new job soon. But it's like, this is what we've been saying would happen for years now, that a bunch of studios are going to start closing, and look at, they're closing. Especially you, Dan. You said it, I think, even more aggressively than I did, although we both certainly agreed on that. And it's not something we're happy to be right about, but my God, the fanboy comments. Well, we were right, guys. Like, the business model doesn't work. It was obvious it didn't work. Yeah, and then I guess Redfall is no longer getting development, a year after it came out or something? That's kind of horseshit to me, too. Even if nobody really cared about Redfall, a game losing support that soon after it comes out, especially an online game, is really bad. But I guess that studio is just randomly defunct now. So
So
or that wing of that studio. Arkane still exists, to be fair.
So there's two pieces to this, or two ways that I want to dovetail off of this. First is I reached out to some devs and just some other sources that work in the industry that aren't technically developers, but like care a lot. Mm-hmm. And the Hi-Fi Rush thing specifically shocked everyone I've talked to. Like, you know, and I think the thing you brought up about their weird Netflix metric, that's something I hadn't considered. But like, for example, one of the people I was talking to, the way I talked to them about it like a week ago, the person talked about how, well, they said it was successful. It broke some records on Steam, or it charted on Steam. This thing has to be a success. Like, how successful were they expecting it? And I said, well, yeah, but like if you look at, like if it was in the top, whatever it was, 5 or 8 or 10 or whatever of games or on Steam the week it came out, finally, not on Game Pass, but to Steam. If you look at that though, like how many is that really total? Like by my math, by concurrent players, which from what I saw was in the thousands, this thing probably didn't sell more than hundreds of thousands. And then that's it. You know, most like the attachment rate on PlayStation is really high. Like and Nintendo too, like they buy games. People buy games on Nintendo and PlayStation. So you missed that completely. And now it's seen as a game that should be free because it's on Game Pass. So you've also primed people to not buy it on Steam or on PlayStation, even though it's come to both. And so you miss those initial week 1 sales or month 1 sales, but then you're also priming it to not being worth more. And even if it sold pretty well on Steam a year after it came out, it's seen as a discount game, and you're not seeing how many more sales it would have had if it was also on PlayStation or Nintendo or something. And so it's probably still a fraction of what it actually needed to make. And once I explained that, and I don't want to get into it too much because they did a lot of work like putting the metrics together and projecting how many it sold. I also think it's an interesting point you made, though. I didn't think of that. Like, yeah, it was a success from their Netflix perspective. But that Netflix perspective was 2 million people played it. And then they noticed later no one signed up for Game Pass to play it. Just people who already owned it did. And new metrics, because they had to develop new ones eventually because it's failing. It's a failing business. So if the old metrics weren't making money, they need new ones. The new metrics probably say this game's a disaster.
Yeah, and I mean, all I have to say at this is, yeah, it sucks. I don't know. It has a 98% rating on Steam. So that's
right. When I say game. Their metrics say it's a disaster, I think if it wouldn't have launched a Game Pass and just had a simultaneous launch on PlayStation, Nintendo, Steam, and Xbox, it would not have been. It would have made the money.
Sold well.
But it did not. So they've already kneecapped it, even if they bring it to other platforms, because it's not new anymore and it's seen as something you shouldn't pay for.
Yep.
Now that it's warming up outside, Jessie couldn't be happier to be jumping around every day in the warmer weather. And you know, it's good for me too. Running around with her, teaching her tricks, that's good for my health as well, not just hers. But all of this gallivanting, well, it takes up time and it pressures me to make my lunches quicker to get moving faster with Jessie every weekend afternoon. And usually quick means less healthy. Well, unless you know about Vite Ramen. This piece of content is brought to you by Vite Ramen. Vite Ramen is a healthy, tasty, and shelf-stable food crafted by an American startup that offers a ton of options for eating healthy, like their classic packages that make it easy to add protein and other ingredients of your choice, and then also their Ramen Go packages that offer a healthy microwavable option for those who truly only have a 15-minute lunch break away from home. And I do need to take a second also to remind everyone that they don't just make ramen. They also have Nano Boost Vitality Powder that I honestly think blows away the health powder competition. I literally drink this any night a broken silicon is recorded extra late instead of coffee. And they also have a collection of silverware and accessories that are always high quality. Like the Goofy Girl DM Nakiri knife, I tried it out. It is insanely sharp. It is probably the nicest knife this household owns. So not just the ramen, although the ramen's great. Everything else on there is high quality. And that's why I've been working with Vite Ramen for so long. I actually like their products, all of their products, a lot. I've never tried something they made that wasn't good. So check them out. And remember that even just clicking on the link in the description helps the channel a ton, and buying some of the special packs through that link helps you save money and support the channel even more. So support Moore's Law Z by checking out Vite Ramen today. So, but again, the shock here, a lot of devs are now worried. They're like, well, they said this was doing well, and then they just killed this whole studio, and they killed Arkane. Is my job safe at all? And there's going to be some running for the doors, I think, at Xbox Studios soon.
Yeah, I mean, there's no security in working at an Xbox studio. I mean, I know gaming in general, a lot of the jobs aren't super secure to begin with, but
true.
If they've closed how many of the studios they've acquired so far, like it's just, and they're speaking through both sides of their mouth and saying, on one hand, Hi-Fi Rush was a huge hit, and on the other, they're the team that made it is unsustainable. Well, both can't be true. Maybe Hi-Fi Rush is a great game. By all metrics, it is, but because they were acquired by the devs shuttering company, they're inevitably going to get shuttered.
Yeah, and then the other thing I wanted to dovetail off of, the first was the reactions to devs. Like, really, people are shocked behind the scenes, people, that this happened. They're shocked and they're scared. The other side is the sentiment I've seen. Man, every Xbox channel's headlines are now just like Xbox. Some of them just look like they've just pivoted to become Xbox hater channels. Like, I don't know. I've never seen this level of sentiment plummet with almost any company ever. Like, even during the PS3 era, it was like controversial. It wasn't like every Sony channel was like, Sony's dead. They were just like, I don't know, PlayStation 3 just seems optimized, costs too much. We can't wait to play Killzone 2 and MGS4 though, but we wish it was sooner. This is like everyone's saying, leave. And I think it's because Phil Spencer made promises, didn't meet them, and then killed these studios unceremoniously out of nowhere. So if you're an Xbox fan, you're like, wait, all my games are coming to PlayStation and you're killing studios I like. Why would I turn on my Xbox anymore? This is depressing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. That seems like very plausible to me. They own 40 studios and they still have nothing to show for it, really. Like, they have a few good games under their belt, but those games have no security in that they're going to like go into creating into emboldening this new good dev that made a really great game, and instead they're going to go to I don't know, what's this dev that's making that quote unquote quadruple A game that we've been talking about for
Star Citizen?
No, not Star Citizen. Like Microsoft said, I can't remember the name of the studio.
Yeah, I don't even remember the name whatsoever. They supposedly made some studio to make quadruple A games.
Yeah, like we've still heard nothing from them, so I don't know, is all of that money just going to them or what at this point?
I don't know, but again, it's a negative note, but I have to say it. I've never seen this level of negativity around a brand just this snowball this quickly over 6 months. I mean, it's just, besides like Alchemist, but I think that's a different circumstance.
Yeah.
And the way this is being handled, even if it is bad at Xbox, is pathetic. Like, this is being handled badly, even if things are bad. Hayubu writes in and says, after listening to Broken Silicon 255, I think I could see Microsoft exiting the dedicated home console space entirely for just a handheld that can play your current PC library like you both discussed, that can make Xbox Mobile run on Windows, have it compatible with existing PC accessories, which include docks that connect to TVs already, by the way, and require only the, $10 PC-only Game Pass. It's a pretty good option. I don't think Microsoft realizes this, though, but I think their competition in gaming isn't Sony or Nintendo. It's Valve. And keeping games on Windows. No shit. And the only person who doesn't seem to get this for the past 20 fucking years is Microsoft, that their competition is Valve, not PlayStation.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good base model for getting you entrance into the Game Pass ecosystem which is what at least Phil Spencer seems to want Xbox to be at this point, would be a handheld. So if they could make a decent handheld that had a dock that had a dock, yeah, I could easily see that being their next console rather than a home console, because I don't know who cares about Microsoft home console still, if I'm being honest.
All right, but gun up to your head. Microsoft comes out. Let's say this thing launches with like I don't know, what would it really be? Like, I don't know, some like Strix Halo thing or maybe a double Kraken, and they claim it's about as strong as a Series X in practice. Like something that's like, 8 cores and 32 CUs or something, and they have it in a handheld, but then they also have a gaming puck, something like maybe twice as thick as my phone here or 3 times. And they're like, yep, this is an Xbox. It's the new one. Plug it into your TV, can run all Game Pass games at a level of quality we think is good. It's $399 or $299, and that's it, and we're done. Do you think that would sell, though?
If it were,
or do you think people would just see Xbox and not buy it?
If it were advertised correctly and it had a bunch of games to launch with it, yeah, I think it could sell well. I think the market's been primed to handhelds at this point, where I think they're seen as potentially premium devices now. So yeah, I could definitely see something like that selling.
Yeah. Okay, I guess we'll see. I continue to think that they just need to fucking make Surface and Xbox. I don't know what's going on over there, and I don't know why.
I mean, maybe they do just need to slowly let the Xbox as a brand die and let the Surface be their replacement to Xbox. I mean, that might be a better option. I don't know.
Or an Xbox variant of the Surface.
Yeah.
All right, well, sorry for the swearing. It's a depressing story that really annoys me. But let us move on to the wrap-up. All right, so AMD confirms Turin naming and core counts, right, which I don't think this really deserved its own story, unlike the Zen 6 one, because I think we've confirmed the Turin stuff a few times. But there you go. And this was something directly leaked by this channel. 500 watts, 192 cores, Zen 5C. That's Turin. Let me see here. Twin Lake surfaces again. I saw some credit being given to this channel because this was the first channel to mention Twin Lake, I believe, or was one of the first ones. So that was nice to see. Don't have much else to say about it. I believe it's a Skymont all E-core.
Oh yeah, that
Alder Lake N successor. So, oh boy. Also, the Asus ROG Ally X was teased, and there was a lot of hype about this before they told everybody what it is. It's the same. It's the same APU. It's a Z1 Extreme still, but with a larger battery and more RAM.
So hopefully it's just the Ally, except not bad this time.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine. I wonder if that's really what it is. Is they're like, and I could see like Minis Forum doing a similar thing with the V3, like having a V4 come out sooner than people expect, just because it's like there's these tons of like little things you learn when you do something first. That I wonder if they're like, it'll feel like a next gen handheld just because we fixed all these issues we had that we didn't know we would have until we launched it and had 500,000 people use it.
Mm-hmm.
Until Lunar Lake handheld teased, I thought that was kind of funny. That we have like Lunar Lake. This happens all the time now. I think like one of the first people to confirm Hawkpoint was actually Minis Forum. Like all these handheld companies and like smaller companies are just like saying, yep, we're going to have Lunar Lake in our handheld gaming device. I will say, I think if there's one place Lunar Lake should excel, it's handhelds. We'll see. Yeah. That is literally where it should excel, though. This one I saw last minute here. This is kind of crazy interesting to me. It seems like there's a new version of the RTX 4050 that, and presumably they could have the 4060 use it too, because there's room there for the RAM, that uses, I believe, dual M.2 slots to connect, which if you think about it, M.2, that's 4 PCIe lanes. So yeah, why not?
I guess, yeah.
and it says in the laptop, if you don't add a GPU to it when customizing it before you order, that you can add extra SSDs.
Okay.
I think this is actually a really cool idea.
That's not a bad idea, no.
Again, lead to what? Upgradable laptop GPUs that just use frickin' M.2.
Yeah.
But I think that's really interesting. It'll also be interesting if on, oh God, what if this happened to him in 10 years? Like ITX or Pico ITX motherboards or whatever it is, Nano, I don't know, whatever the smaller than ITX one is. Like,
Pico would be below, well, Pico's would be like, I don't know, tiny, but I don't know why they'd go with Pico, but
it sounds cool, Dan.
Call it whatever you want.
Pico is one.
Nano would be what should go below Micro.
Oh, no, they all exist. There's Mini ITX, Nano ITX, Pico ITX, Mobile ITX.
Okay.
So yeah, what if there was a Nano is quite a bit smaller, but could conceivably have room. What if they start selling nano ITX motherboards that use M.2 size GPUs in them for the ultimate small form factor? I don't know. I just think that idea is interesting. Also, this came up in the video, but Nvidia and MediaTek are allegedly working on building premium gaming handhelds. I'm just going to point this out again. That is something that I leaked in the Switch leak that I was told by people at Nvidia. The Switch is not the only handheld they're working on, that they're working on a lot of other stuff as well because they want a premium device with other partners. And so there you go. Proof of what I said again in that Switch leak, which is slowly turning into one of the best leaks out of this channel ever. And then finally, AIBs are teasing RTX 50 series coolers. Palette showed off some sort of... They basically said, look at our new high-end GPU cooler. That's a hybrid liquid and air cooler. And we will be talking about new concepts in graphics at Computex.
Woo!
Yeah, they're going to announce Blackwell at Computex, guys.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
I'm sure.
Alrighty. That is the last of the wrap-up. Let us now move on to the final reader mails. Let's see here. Compressor Earthblocks writes in. He says, not really a correction, but additional information for Broken Silicon 256 about Sony buying Paramount. I think this is a long game move in terms of mastering movies. Sony has been supplying the industry with their monitors for mastering content for years, and recently they've been paving the way with new monitors to master 4,000 nits. The previous HDR standard was 1,000. This also happens to be a time when Sony is betting on mini LED for their flagship TVs, which is a hit, whereas LED cannot. Well, LED is a hit too. I think that coupled with Sony's image processing, which is basically the de facto king of the TV space right now, will be them saying, hey, if you want the best picture, you use Sony. We support this standard and these other TVs do not. I believe they've also struck a deal with Amazon Prime, calibrated settings on their TVs. Oh, interesting. As well, in this same vein of if you view Prime content on Bravia, it's better than anywhere else. Yeah, we really got to tell our mom, Dan, to stop using whatever that old Fire Stick she's using on that OLED TV. I think it just looks worse than the apps built into the TV. Like she can just... Wait a second. All right, this is a thing. This is a thing. Like I was at my parents' house and they wanted me to install like the apps that I have accounts to. And it was like, well, don't do it on the TV, do it on the Fire Stick so I can bring it on trips. Why don't we just do it on both? Leave the Fire Stick in the bag.
I don't know.
And then you have it there. You don't need to unplug it from the TV. You could just always have it in the bag.
It's boomer.
Why did I not think of saying that?
It's boomer stuff, Tom.
It is boomer stuff. This is such a left turn to bring up here, but I think it's a funny conversation. I think it's a thing people would find funny.
I mean, yeah, if Sony had like their own special settings and like the best picture quality, and I don't know if they have would have the best compression with Paramount. That would be great for screening movies on. And I also think it could be a plan. I think I said this on the last episode to like bring their future like video game adaptation series to have a home network on Paramount rather than shopping them around to like Amazon, Netflix, HBO. Not to say I think something like The Last of Us will get pulled from HBO. I think HBS synonymous.
If they were really shrewd, they would leave it there as an advertisement to get the rest of their stuff.
Yeah, but I think The Last of Us more easily translates as a TV show than the other stuff they're trying to do. And I think they're going to have a harder time selling something like God of War as a TV series because it might just look feels
like it should be.
It might just look kind of tacky like the Halo show did to me, but we'll see. I'm not saying it will be bad. Just my thoughts.
Well, another thing to be brought up here is Paramount has a mountain of unremastered films that if Sony is, I don't know if they are, if Sony is the best at this, they know they might make a play to remaster all of these classics and sell them and include them on Sony Paramount Plus.
Yeah, that's probably true because I think viewing this as like a Sony buying Paramount specifically for gaming purposes misses the fact that Sony is a massive company that does more than just gaming, even if gaming is their biggest sector.
Yeah. Nuts Cracked writes in and says, in Broken Silicon 256, in the bit where Sony is in talks by Paramount, nobody mentioned that Paramount is who makes the Halo TV series. And would that be a blessing, either Microsoft not to allow Sony to make it and then it gets canceled finally, or Sony to actually make the show good? Either way, I think Sony being in charge of a Halo TV show could only be a win-win.
I mean, I think this is more of a snarky comment, but I'm curious. I don't think development of the Halo TV show would really change if Sony buys Microsoft. I mean, buys Paramount. I don't think Sony's in the position to buy Microsoft. But
no. Joking aside, I don't think if the Halo show was canceled, I don't think it'd be because Sony's in charge.
Yeah, my guess would be like, yeah, you guys can keep making the Halo show if people watch it.
Mm-hmm. And Microsoft wouldn't be so vindictive to say no.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, that'd be really an interesting future, like the Sony streaming network that has all the Paramount stuff. And there's an Uncharted spin-off series, an Uncharted show, God of War show. There's the Spyro Kids show. And then there's also just Halo there. Like, it's not even just on PlayStation consoles. It's just also on their streaming service.
Yep.
Techno writes in one more time. He says, do you think RDNA 5's SEDs could be using 2 nanometer? Mainly because you mentioned a lot of reasons in 256 for using 2 nanometer instead of 3. And RDNA 5's launch window lines up with 2 nanometers release, meaning they could do a Radeon 7-like situation where they switch over to the new node early, even if it's slightly worse comparing to older nodes. Launch window lines up because for RDNA 4s now, that's there. Zen 6 will have 2 nanometer models coming out by the end of next year. Maybe. I don't know. It's interesting. And, Daniel Nenny on the last episode, he said that he's noticing something that I've noticed as well, which surprised, like 3 nanometer is already a wild success in how many customers are buying it up, but 2 nanometer is outpacing it in aligned pre-sales than 3. So I'm noticing this thing where a lot of companies, look at Zen 5 Strix, Zen 5 non-Strix, you look at Blackwell getting moved to 4 nanometer. I feel like a lot of companies, just for the absolute best of the best of the best, Apple would pay for it, Nvidia would with Vera Rubin next year, are going to 3 nanometer quickly. But I can't help but notice most people seem to be targeting 2 nanometer and 4 right now. And kind of that's actually the play. And if that continues to be true, and I have no reason to not believe it will, yeah, it would not surprise me if RDNA 5 is actually on 2 nanometer at this point. Because from what I'm hearing from people at AMD, they seem to lovey the 2 nanometer.
I mean, when is 2 nanometer already in mass production or no? I don't know where they're at with that.
I don't remember where they're at in terms of ramping and stuff, but okay. I could see it. I could really see it because so far it seems to be going pretty well. Okay. And I think what Daniel Nenny also said on the last episode is it's a very easy to design 2 node, like or something to that effect, I believe.
Okay.
Let me see. Sorry, another source got back to me about the AI thing. By the way, everyone got back to me. Nobody has seen any proof of any focus group saying everyone's demanding AI. Not one source.
That is not a surprise to me.
Some people said, to be fair, I'm not in marketing, and other people said, I'm not sure, but no one said yes, and some people said no evidence. There is no evidence out there suggesting this is what people are asking for.
All right. Well, I guess I'm not surprised to hear that.
Dan, get your curved 3D TV that's on the blockchain ready.
Oh shit!
Whether you want it or not,
can I get a curved 3D AI blockchain TV?
You can. I do think these have a lot of synergy with each other, and it's also called .com.
Well, let me see if.
What are you looking up?
Dang it! I was hoping. I was trying to make a joke, but it didn't work. I wanted AI's Gemini BS on Google to tell me if I could buy a curved AI TV, but it just pulled up a Reddit thread. So
I'd say it still didn't work then.
Nope, it still didn't. It still didn't give me one of their BS prompts. So I guess thank you, Google. Thank you, Google, for continuously making your service less useful.
Yeah, we won't get into their image generation fiasco. Some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen. But yeah, I mean, I think that's going to do it for this episode then. I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to like, to comment down below for the algorithm, and to share it. Sharing actually helps really quite so much. Tell your friends about us. Tell people to check us out. And please remember to subscribe to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel and ring the bell button there as well. Download and subscribe to the podcast on your podcast app of your choice. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts. I will say that too. If we could get more people to give us some reviews on Apple Podcasts, there's been a few recently, but there could be a lot more. And that does help drive Apple recommending us. And that gets new people to check out the show, not just from YouTube. And then I guess the final thing too, join the Moore's Law is Dead Patreon. We just had a new Die Shrink come out. I think it was a really good episode. I will have a guest coming on very soon, actually recording early because I will be gone this weekend. And it's a Department of Defense / defense engineer who's able to talk about government switching to AMD from Intel. So that's going to be crazy. Dan is much more interested in his dog, but
I'm trying to get her to get back on screen again, but she is refusing to move the last inch.
But if you are interested in asking a defense engineer about the U.S. government switching from AMD or Intel to AMD, those questions will come out early this week. So join the Patreon as soon as you can. That is where we're trying to drive as much growth as possible this year, because it's just obvious some other methods are not as reliable, and I really want to expand the team as much as possible. But I guess that's all I got, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. I've probably said that 3 times now because I'm rambling.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it too.
I hope you enjoy it. Then just say it again. Is Tom breaking? Well, the answer is yes, if you've been paying attention. But I need a break. I need to stop talking. Have a good week, everybody.
Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carmen Cry and Carrie Nosugada as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page. In the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie Nosugada as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guest questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, Z Jits, Daniel D, Aaron Close, Jen Rauner, Deke, Nicholas Buckner, Daniel Hyde, Jeezy Ziggy, MJB1, HardForum.com, SNES Chalmers, Jim Ferriera, Valcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Gregory Sacker, Sark Castro, Evan Dingle, Chris Rich, Compressed Earthblocks, 3DS Boy 08, Hal Buma, Shredbird, Toka, Greg Wanchek, Holden Mobley, Semi Molas, Benjamin Cannon, Jonathan, Jordan Simkovic, William Leak, The Boss Haas, Blake, Franco Frederick, Jake 223, Jake Martin, Slicky, Stephen Hart, Meat and Pork, Tim Robb, Ian Clifford, Chrysantine, Travis Gooding, Christopher A. Butler, Mad, Zutsu Taylor, Stephen Coates, Neithra Zink, Michael McGee, Greg, Patty Cakes, Amy Bill Chief, Tommy, Mark Mitchell, I Should, Mark Raidmaker, Ames Anderson, Cole Attic, Jensen N, Cameron, Wesley Sager, Henry Shang, Michelle Pell, D31337 Antics, Hexa Puma, Reginald Ari, Tika Autumn, Jamie Witters, Jeff Settler, Loophole 35, Windstar, JSMMH, James I, Raider, Corey Leonard, Little Germany, Shay, Milton, Pulse Media, Melodic Warrior, Dave Schultz, Mac Daffy, Stephen Dick, Chuck Glennon, Brett Jones, Mai Sharona, Austin Haggerty, Justin Bustle, Joefoot, Brian Scanlon, Winwing, Hardland, Slushbod, Jensen Angima, Joseph Kelly, Himsa Gung, Tails 2299, Mil Valverga, John Sisyphos, 7771, The Forbidden Juice, RB Racer, AC, Brian Wright, Michael Cozy, Dr. J. Matt, Alex Vega, Free D, John Swin, Jola Martina, Kikum, Albert Gun, Solarized, 80, Matthew Marlowe, Time Unveiled, Hoodat 42, Penta Winter, Rowan McKicky, Cornster 671, Sprutnik, Jeffrey, Gentleman, Angel of Cake, Omega Doge, John Wick Boomstick, Nick, Scizomania, Curry King 3, Zombie Killer 777, Porcelain Oats, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.